and welcome to the Recovering Families podcast. Excuse me, I'm Terri Alexander.
Hey everybody, and I'm Steven Washington, her brother.
Yes, my brother. And we are so glad to see you here tonight. We're already in April. Oh my gosh, it's almost tax time. Did you get your taxes done?
They're being done right now. They're being
Good,
done right now. Fingers crossed, and
Yeah.
hopefully they'll be done on time. If not, she'll get me an extension.
Good. Everybody get your stuff together. How was your day? What'd you do today? Anything fun?
It was a good day. It's a beautiful day here in LA, and I went out on a date. So it was fun. I had a really good time. It was good.
Okay.
Yeah, because I don't know if for folks who are watching or listening who don't know, I just recently went through a divorce, and so I'm just getting back into the dating scene, y'all, and like dipping my toes in the water with this online dating. And this was my second date with a second person. And I was telling you earlier how I got the butterflies a little bit.
The butterflies.
Which is nice. It's better than a womp.
Yeah. Well, my butterflies died. They're no longer. There's no butterflies. Mine are probably more like scorpions. I don't know. I wouldn't even. I don't know. 30 going on 31 years this year. There ain't no butterflies.
Yeah, it's something else.
It's something else.
Yeah.
It's got a category of its own. Kind of thing. So, well, good. I'm glad you had a good time.
Yeah.
You deserve it.
Thanks. How about you? Tell me something good about your day.
Homework all day.
Yeah.
All day. We've been off for spring break, and I have been just in Easter play mode and graduation mode. So I picked up our caps and gowns day before yesterday. Yay!
What color? What's their color? Is it black or is it another
black?
color?
It's black. Okay. Yeah, with my Phi Theta Kappa tassel thingy.
Nice.
So I'm excited. I go meet with the speech counselor next week. She doesn't think she has to work with me too much, so.
Nice, because you're giving the speech. You're giving a speech at the graduation.
I am one of two speakers, one of two student speakers chosen out of 20. I found out the other day there were 20 people that auditioned, and myself and another lady who's probably my age or a little older.
Wow.
Were chosen to speak. So yeah. And they were really, as I told you before, they're just really, for those of you that don't know, my daughter and I are graduating together from college, from Trident Technical College. So they are really, like that angle. They like the fact that a daughter and a mother would graduate together, and they loved my audition speech so much that they want me to use it for the graduation speech, which wasn't what I was planning, but they liked it, so I'll just write it. But it's exciting. It's exciting.
That's so great.
I'm thankful for the platform and the opportunity. So
yeah, I'm so happy for you guys. I really, really, really. Yeah. I'm so proud of you.
Yay! Yay! So
good.
Yeah. So today, if you don't mind, I just want to say what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
We are going to talk about your book, Recovering You. And the subtitle of the book is Soul Care and Mindful Movement for Overcoming Addiction. I'm excited. Look at that. Look at my handsome brother. He's so handsome and he's single.
Yep.
So I'm excited. He's out there, y'all. He's out there.
Oh, but I'm really taking it slow. But that's another show. That is another show.
But I'm excited to talk to you about this because I haven't had the opportunity, and I can't believe, gosh, when did this go live? Like, it seems like it was just, oh God, I remember the writing process for you. And oh God.
2022. It's 2022.
Wow. So we're going on 2 years. Wow. So there are a bunch of questions I want to ask.
Okay. Yeah.
And if any of them are too personal or what have you, you can pass.
I don't think
But
so. I mean,
no, you're good.
the book is all.
Yeah, the
I'm
book
just,
is all. That's right. That's
I'm
right.
just
All
giving
right.
it all. So yeah,
Yes,
there's
yes.
not much
So
that's too personal. I mean,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, good, 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 good. I want to start with tell us about the book and what inspired you to write it. You think I would know because we're close. We're so close, but I don't know what inspired you to write it.
um, that's a really good question. Um, well, recovery is such a big part of my life,
Hmm.
and I feel like the life that I have today, which I really do love, even with the ups and downs, I wouldn't have it if I weren't sober.
Mm,
And being sober has given me a life beyond my wildest dreams.
mm,
And there's so much that's gone into my getting sober and being able to stay sober for now. This July will be 22 years. Um, there's just so many things that have been a part of it, aside from my relationship with God, my higher power, and 12-step recovery. There have been other practices that have helped support me over the last 22 years, but some of them, especially what I teach in the book, really came into my life over the last decade.
hmm
And I wanted to share that. What I know from being in recovery is that we we grow and change in part due to the sharing of our stories, sharing of our
Yeah.
experiences. And I know the healing power of that. So I wanted this book to almost be like a recovery meeting, um, like a holistic recovery meeting in the pages of a book
Right.
that's just really going to speak to the body, the mind, and the soul, the spirit of a person.
Okay.
So yeah, so when I had the opportunity to write a book, because New World Library approached me about
Oh,
writing a book, and I thought
how
about
often does
writing a
that happen?
yeah,
Yeah.
I thought about writing a book, but I didn't know how I was going to go about it. I didn't know how I would write it and get it out into the world, and I decided not to even think about it, not to sweat about it. Just start writing, and I started writing short stories about my life, about aspects of our life. And that came about because I would go on these trips to England to spend time with my ex-husband Lee's family, and his family is wildly different from ours.
Mm, yeah.
Wildly different, because there's so many of them, and they're it's not the same. I mean, they didn't experience the a lot of the trauma that
Mm,
we experienced
yeah.
and have had to live
Eesh.
through and heal from.
Yeah.
And so just the contrast really sparked my imagination. So I would write these stories inspired, and a lot of times I would write when I was over there. Like I would, get get these, like much like you when you're writing your plays,
Mhm.
you'll get this inspiration in the
Yeah.
middle of the night sometimes, or like, and you can't, you have to get it out
Yeah. Yeah.
in that moment,
Yeah.
otherwise you might lose it.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
was starting to happen to me. So I started posting them online, and Georgia from New World Library, she's one of the editors. She reached out to Lee, didn't know that we were married at the time, and said, "I'm writing to ask about your friend Steven. I was wondering if maybe he would be interested in writing a book."
Wow.
And it kind of started from there. It started from there, and I started writing the book during the pandemic, so that was also a really weird time
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
be doing that, but it was a perfect time.
It
So that's
was.
basically what inspired me to write the book.
Oh, awesome. I like that, and I didn't know that. Oh,
Mhm,
I like that.
mhm,
Okay, so wow, you've been in recovery for 22 years this year.
mhm.
Tell us about your own recovery journey and what was the what is one of the most important things you have learned along the way? And you probably just mentioned that.
Mm. Well, I had my first drink in high school. I was 15.
Mm,
That trip to Germany. So I went to Germany,
mm.
everybody, when I
Yep,
was like
I remember that.
15
I remember
because
that.
I was on a dance scholarship with a dance
Yep.
school in Connecticut, and she took her students to Germany and Switzerland for a summer or part of a summer to dance and perform around local villages and stuff. And on that trip, I had my first well, it wasn't my first sip of alcohol because daddy used to give me beer when I was a baby,
Yes,
apparently,
he did.
when I
Yes,
was
he did.
busted, I guess.
Yeah,
So maybe
he
that's
did.
where the taste for it came from. I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah. Yeah, I did not agree with that. I just wanna go on record and say I was not
No,
yeah,
it's not.
I knew
No, no.
about that, was not happy about that, but okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I had my first drink there, my first beer, and I loved how it made me feel. It was at
Mhm.
the last night in Germany, and the local boys who were in love with the girls in my dance troupe were just pumping us up with beer, and I drank
Mm,
it, and I hated the taste of it. They served it in a metal cup, metal
mm.
like pilsner.
Yeah,
It was awful, but I loved how it made me feel.
yeah,
I felt really calm. I felt funny. I felt smart. I even felt attractive because at 15, you're starting to feel things as
yeah.
you move through puberty. So I was feeling all these things because on my own, without all that, I was generally kind of a shy kid, I think.
Mhm.
Um, but alcohol just made me feel more and it made me forget some of the horrors that we and the challenges that we had growing up. And so after that, I wanted to feel that again. So I kept trying to recreate the magic of that night for years as I drank and eventually started doing drugs and all moving to New York to go to college and getting into the club scene um and about me and the drugs and
In the drugs.
yeah, everybody. There was one time
Ah,
when I was in college and I had gone out to a club in New York, and I think at the time I was also living with Daddy and Diane, our stepmother, and yeah, I went out and I partied. I did ecstasy, and um, and I took too much, and it made me incredibly ill. So ill that I didn't know what to do. I was really freaked out, and I called you, and I had
yeah,
to confess to you that what I had
yeah,
done, and
yeah.
you freaked out.
I freaked out. I
You
freaked
really
out.
freaked out.
I was so worried. I was so worried.
You cried,
I cried. I did cry. I cried. I did.
and
I
it's funny
cried.
because I before that, that was the first bit of evidence that I had that, um, that my drinking, that what I do
Mhm.
impacts other people.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just about me.
Yep.
That's the first time I got that lesson, but then I forgot it.
Yeah.
So I drank for a long time. I did drugs
Yeah.
for a long time, and
Yeah.
I did it successfully because I was able to kind of build a life.
Yeah.
I had good jobs. I had a roof over my head.
Mhm.
I was able to take care of myself pretty much.
A
Um,
functioning
I was functioning.
functioning yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
but, I got to the point where I wasn't able to function well with it,
Right.
and I think one of the things that alcohol and drugs did for me, my using, isolated me from people because I feel like there was a time during some of those years where I felt more distant from you, I felt more
Yeah.
distant from daddy, I felt more
Yeah.
distant from my mother, especially when I
Mhm.
was living in Canada and
Mhm.
going through that whole process of living in Canada,
Yeah.
and that's when I really started to go down.
Mhm.
And, I would say my bottom was about a year and a half long, year and a half, almost 2 years long.
That's a
And
long
yeah, I mean, that's when I started to really realize that I had a problem or But I thought, oh, it's the drugs. It's not the drinking. So I'll just stop doing drugs. But when I stopped doing drugs like cocaine and marijuana, I started to drink more because I needed something to help me feel what I was
That
feeling. And
mhm.
then eventually I started doing it all again. And you know, for me, when I finally uh, stopped, it was a night that I had gone out to a party at a friend's house, and we went out clubbing, and I'd been using that night, um, and it was kind of like a normal kind of weekend night for me. Um, and then the next day, I went to Six Flags with those same friends. I overslept. I missed them when they were ringing my bell to pick me up. They waited for me probably for like 45 minutes because I did not hear them. We went on this trip to Six Flags. I have pictures from that day. I was exhausted. I was so skinny. And I just looked like in the picture, I just looked like I'm smiling, but I look like looks like nobody's home.
Wow.
And and that day I had a telephone appointment with a therapist that I was seeing. And I thought it would be okay to have a phone appointment when I'm at Six Flags and folks are screaming around me. And, I just did not see a problem with it. And he was like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" So that was like a wake up call. That was like a mirror being put in front of my face for me to see myself. And also, what also happened around that time too was I was performing in the show, I was dancing in the Lion King at the time, and I had a couple of friends come visit me, come see the show, and came backstage afterwards. And that one of the friends was in recovery, my friend Craig,
Mm,
and his partner Kelvin was what we call a normie. Um, they came backstage, and then when I eventually realized that I had a problem and I went to Craig for help because he was the only person I knew who was sober, I told him what had been going on. He said, "It's interesting that you say that because when we saw you perform, Kelvin said after the show, 'Is Steven okay?'" Because
mm,
normally the lights are really on bright in him, but
mhm.
when we saw him, the lights were turned
Yeah.
way down.
Wow. Wow.
So
Wow.
it was from around that time, that day that I went to Craig's house and confessed and got his help, asked for his help. He took me to my first meeting, and that was 22 years ago this July, late July.
So you did it all as an outpatient?
Yeah, I never went to rehab.
Okay.
I didn't that wasn't part of my story. I started going to meetings, and that was
Okay.
enough for me. I went every day, sometimes multiple times a day. I did what was recommended, the 90 meetings in 90
Mhm.
days. I
Okay.
started working with a sponsor. Craig was my sponsor because I didn't know anyone else,
Right.
and he was the perfect sponsor for me that first time out.
Okay.
It was great. Yeah, yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
Let me ask you this. We come from a family of addicts,
Yes, we do.
and by that time, you had seen addiction in our family.
Mhm.
Did that I mean, did you ever think to yourself, "Well, I'll never get that bad"? I mean, looking at
Yeah,
there's so many to choose from.
I know.
Did you ever think that? Did you ever think to yourself, "Oh, I'll never get that bad. That won't be me."
Honestly, I thought I was too smart to get that bad.
Yeah.
I thought, and this is judgment on my part. I
Mhm.
thought I was much smarter than and much more sophisticated than, our father or
Yeah.
our uncles or
Mhm.
aunts or anyone.
Mhm.
I just
Mhm.
thought I was different. And I
Mhm.
thought the people I was doing the things I was doing with, where I was doing it, I just thought it was just different. And I thought it was
Mhm.
just part of the culture of being in New York and being a performer. I thought
Yeah.
that. Um, Yeah, so that thought kept me
Mhm.
out there much longer than I probably would have been had I not had that thought, had I not had that belief that I was untouchable in that way or that I couldn't because the thing is, they all like one of our uncles had a really low bottom. I'll never like I thought to myself, well, at least I'm not like so and so
Mm.
strung out on crack and like
Woo.
hanging out underneath the stairwell of my apartment building.
Mm.
in New York, like that time. That's a true story. So I thought, well, as long as I'm
Was he
never like
really?
that, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Oh, wow.
yeah, yeah.
Well, I was thinking about the time when this isn't funny, but
Mhm,
he came running into our his sister's home in New York,
mhm,
and she had a railroad apartment. You know
mhm.
what those are, right?
Yeah,
They go to
yeah.
and, he ran in, grabbed a stereo piece of equipment, and ran back out,
Ooh,
and oh, as a matter of fact, wait, that was the first time I brought Chaz to New York. I
oh,
think yeah, and they ran I think that was when no, that was another time. But anyway, yeah, he ran in, grabbed this piece of equipment, and ran out with it, and then we all went running after him to get it back from him, and that night, we were looking for some place to take him because it was that
yeah. That was around that time.
mhm,
That was around that time that they
yeah,
showed up, at my apartment, because I lived on 125th Street in St. Nicholas, and
mhm,
and, yeah, and they found a way into the building was and they were passed out underneath the stairs, and I remember them knocking on the door of my apartment, and I don't think I answered the door.
yeah,
I think I was so freaked out.
yeah,
I was so kind of afraid. I didn't know what to make of it all,
yeah,
because I felt like what happened to them, which had been happening or slowly building,
yeah,
it felt like it was like, bam, that it was just like a shit show,
yeah,
immediately. But I know that's not the story.
right,
But yeah,
yeah,
we come from a family of addicts,
yeah,
alcoholics, um, a lot of people with mental health issues. I mean, there's a lot to navigate. It's been a lot to
yeah,
navigate. And
yeah,
drinking and drugging helped me forget some of that. Helped
yeah.
me, take the edge off of all that. Yeah.
You know what's really funny now that we're talking about this? I'm sorry,
Don't
veering off
say
a little
sorry.
bit.
This is great.
So, I remember, Steve, so I was the one who would I too felt the way you felt with regards to how the alcohol made me feel, but for me,
Mhm.
in the beginning in middle school, I used to bring the alcohol to school in 7 Up bottles, and we would all be in the back of the be up it was like the classroom was like a theater
Mhm.
stadium looking thing. So we'd be up and we'd be drinking. So the alcohol actually in the beginning made me popular because I was bringing
Mhm.
it and everything.
Yeah.
So just being that person who could bring the alcohol and brought the cigarettes and it made me popular in that way.
Yeah.
And then I started drinking it and I didn't like the like you, I didn't like the taste of it, but I liked how it how it made me feel until it made me sick to the point of vomiting.
Yeah.
So then I started the weed, and that,
Mhm.
made me feel like, okay, well, I can do that.
Mhm.
Until one day I was so high on the school bus on my way home living with Daddy and Diane.
What?
And for those that yeah, Steve, I was high. I
I
was
did
so high. And I was
y'all, this is all news to me.
listen, and for those that don't know, that our dad was a police officer
Mhm.
and was no stranger to weed and all other narcotics. And
Mhm.
I think that this was a day I got high, and Tanya wasn't with me. I was with someone else, but I was with her boyfriend, who was our contact, who was our weed
Mhm.
man,
Mhm.
and his best friend. And we were smoking weed, and we were getting high at school. And I got on the bus, and they put me on the bus by myself, and I don't know what it was, different weed. I was so extremely high and
Oh,
so extremely paranoid on this
yeah.
bus ride home, praying. I said, Lord, if you get rid of this high, if you bring this high down before I get off this bus, I promise you I will never get high again. And I did eventually, but
Yeah.
but It was a long time. It was a long time. But again, I never thought that I would become an addict because of what I had seen. But I was
Mhm.
still drinking. I didn't stop smoking weed until Lloyd told me to stop.
Your
Lloyd
first
told
husband.
me, my
Mhm.
first husband, Terrell's dad, said he
Mhm.
didn't want me smoking weed anymore, and I stopped. I stopped smoking weed. I didn't smoke after that. But
Interesting.
then I noticed Tanya's use. Tanya's use escalated, escalated,
Yeah.
escalated, escalated. And I remember going to a party with her, Steve. We were in the bathroom, and she was with her boyfriend at the time, with someone else, and the weed smelled funny. It smelled
Mm,
really had this sickening sweet smell, and it was cocaine and weed.
yeah.
And I didn't take any of it. I was like, I don't, this does not smell right. I remember being in that bathroom and wanting to leave.
Yeah.
And yeah, and
You
it was
probably got
around,
a contact high.
it
Being
was,
in the bathroom in the
oh, it was
yeah,
so gross. It was so gross. But I
it's a horrible
remember,
smell.
yeah, it was a
Mhm.
horrible smell. It was a horrible smell. But I remember her use escalating. And I
Yeah.
remember being afraid. And then I remember when you called me and told me about the ecstasy thing, and it just brought that all back. And I was like, "Oh my
Oh,
god, yeah." So it was a,
wow.
yeah. So that brought that, and that's probably why, another reason why I cried so much, because you're my brother, of course, but I remember Tanya being to that point, and I can say her name because I'm sure she'll bring it up on our podcast when
Yeah,
we bring her on. But
yeah.
I remember not so, and then when I had Terrell,
Mhm.
I got married to Charles, and she went off to Minnesota, and I
Mhm.
thought she was in school, and she wasn't. She was in rehab. So we were
Mm.
out of contact for the longest, and it wasn't until Terrell was in kindergarten that I got the call from her that she was in rehab.
Mm.
So I remember when it all brought it back. Like I wasn't there to help you, thinking I could do something for you, and then I get that call from Tanya, and I felt like, oh my God, I failed my brother and I failed my best friend. It's like, oh my gosh. So, like you said, the addiction affects not just the addict, but to those that love them. So, yeah,
And
that
there's
was,
nothing you could have done to save Tanya from that
oh, yeah,
experience,
no,
just like no one could
absolutely
save
not.
me from that experience, and I'm
Right.
glad because that experience has given me so much, has brought me to
Yeah,
where I am right now.
absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
that's one of the reasons why I love having these conversations because I
Yeah.
learned so much more about you, about us.
Hmm.
I had no idea you went through that with Tanya, and so that when
Yeah.
I brought that moment to you
Hmm.
way back when, how that triggered you, I had no idea.
Yeah.
And but what you remind me of is the fact that, like, as disgusting as that smells must have been in that bathroom with the joint laced with cocaine, I know I can smell that smell right now,
Mm.
recalling it, and there was a
Yeah.
time when I just was like, "Oh, I would never." And then at some point,
Yeah.
I smoked coke for sure, yeah, I mean, at that point, I was just like, "Get let me get it any way I could." My
Yeah.
preferred way was to snort it, but
Yeah.
I didn't turn it away if somebody offered it to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
So
gosh.
glad I'm
Well,
not living that way anymore. I'm so glad.
yeah. So am I. Oh
Yeah.
my God. But
Mhm.
you're where you are now as a result of that journey.
Oh, yeah,
It's
absolutely.
like, and you just, you said that in the beginning. It is. I mean, it's nothing you've been through was wasted,
Mm-mm.
and oh gosh. Well, let me ask you this.
Mhm.
The book's subtitle is Soul Care and Mindful Movement for Overcoming Addiction. What is soul care, and why is that important? You talk about that a lot.
Yeah, I think soul care is anything that well, soul care is anything that we do that takes care of ourselves, takes care of not even just our physical self, but our emotional self, our mind, our spiritual self. Because those three, the body, mind, spirit, can't be separated.
Right.
So anything that I do for my body is going to affect, I think, my soul. the essence of me. And vice versa. Anything I do for my spirit, for my soul, affects my body. Just in the way that when I'm having a moment where I'm really triggered in fight or flight, my nervous system is triggered and activated. If I could take some deep breaths and have a conversation with God, that changes everything.
Yeah.
It might not change the circumstance, but it changes how I show
You
up
look
in
at
that
it. Mhm.
moment.
Mhm.
So that's that's something that I really wanted to have as part of the book, because it's so much more than stop doing a person stopping
Yeah.
drinking, stopping
Mhm.
drugs. It's like, what are you going to do? What are you going to replace that
Yeah.
with?
Yep.
How are you going to fill yourself up
Mhm.
in a more holistic way that will satisfy you even more so in a true way that than you thought drugs and alcohol or whatever your um thing that you are powerless over does, you know?
Yeah. That's good. I like
Yeah,
that. I like
yeah.
that. Um, Now you say that mindful movement and focused deep breathing can help us eliminate stagnation and release long-held emotions and tension.
Mhm.
Tell us more about how movement can facilitate that.
Well, from a Chinese medicine perspective,
Mhm.
everything is energy,
Mhm.
and that the body is a form of energy, and our emotions are a form of energy, and our thoughts and our consciousness are a form of energy. It's all the same energy, but different
Mhm.
manifestations of it.
Mhm.
Kind of like ice is water when it's melted, and
Mhm.
then water is mist is water evaporating. So it's all the same,
Mhm.
different manifestations. But there's a belief that energy can become stagnant in the body. Sorry, there's a bird in the window and BB on my lap. It's been activated. So you go over there and get that. You go over there and get that bird, girl. You get that bird.
I wondered when she was going to interrupt the podcast. It's like I saw her tail. It's like, and you're trying to ignore her tail. I've got to meet BB. I've got to meet BB in person. I've got to.
You will. But like what can create stuck energy, the what can impede the flow of energy in the body is stress.
Mm.
Stress, of course, an injury could impede the flow of energy in the body physically. And emotions too. When we have emotions that we don't express, that we hold in, that
Mhm.
creates stagnation and discomfort.
Mm.
So movement is a way to get the energy to circulate. One of the things that I found with qigong from the moment that I started doing it when I was in Chinese med school, and you know my story around Chinese
Yep.
med school, that
Mhm.
I was so convinced that I was supposed to be a Chinese medicine doctor. I moved from New York to California in order to go to school to do that.
Yeah.
I had to jump through so many hoops to just be accepted into a school, only to get there and realize that it wasn't what I wanted to do,
Yeah.
and I freaked out. I didn't know what to do. I was really distraught.
Yeah.
And also the workload was overwhelming me. So
Mm.
I really had a breakdown.
Mm.
But one of the things that helped me in that
And I
process,
didn't know that.
yeah, I mean,
Yes,
I
go
didn't
ahead.
think I was going to be able to stay sober du- during that
Wow.
time. I would before I would go into class, I would be in my car crying,
Mm.
just calling my friend John, like in New York, crying on the phone because I was so scared, or so I was having a panic attack. So, but one of the things that helped me in that process of healing and moving through that was the Qigong classes that were taught as part of the curriculum. There was something about doing the movement over and over and over again, because that's what qigong is. You do one movement, several movements in a class, but one movement at a time, over and over and over again, and you coordinate the breath with it. You focus your intention, you envision the circulation, the movement of the energy in your body, and it helps you regulate, self-regulate, and it helps the flow of energy physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. I get so many insights when I'm moving my body and breathing. So that's been a really big part of my recovery. And it's something that I try to teach everyone that I work with, to move their body mindfully and to breathe and to make that a regular practice, because there's just countless benefits to it. And as a sober person, that's been a huge part of my self-care
Mm,
routine. I don't know if I just what I was doing at the beginning of my recovery, which was basically going to meetings, working with a sponsor, working the steps, having sponsees sometimes, doing service, which is all great,
right.
but I required more.
Hmm.
And the more was like I started going to a spiritual center in a church. I started going to therapy. And then
Yeah.
eventually the movement came into my life too. And then it's like, oh, I'm creating my own toolbox
Right.
of things to help me. So that's what movement does. Yeah.
So that's the reason you went to Chinese medicine, was for the qigong.
And yeah, unbeknownst to me at the
Yeah,
time. Yeah. And that's what when I had that
that's the
realization,
takeaway.
that's when I had that realization, that's what helped me make peace with the fact that I left
Yep,
something that had started, because I had a lot
yep,
of guilt and shame about starting something and then not following through.
mhm.
I just wasn't supposed to.
No, you were
Mm-mm.
only there to get that,
Mhm.
and then that's it. That's all you needed from that season. In that season, that's all you needed to that's all you needed. That was your takeaway, and that seed produced a whole lot of fruit. It produced a whole new, side of what you do, along with the Pilates, and you know what I mean. So yeah, that was
Yeah.
the seed that you took from that. That's awesome. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
awesome. Yep, yep. Each chapter of okay, next question is each chapter of your book ends with a short qigong based mindful movement exercise where you just explains what qigong is and what role it's played in your own recovery journey. Did you want to elaborate any more on that, or
Well, I just in each chapter is broken down. Well,
Mhm.
each chapter I talk about a certain topic. Like one of the
Right.
first chapters is about self-care, and then the next one I believe is about isolation and understanding isolation.
Yeah.
And I explore shame and
Mm.
fear and
Yeah.
so many other things. It's a lot of information. Me sharing my story, my friends that I interviewed part of the book in each chapter, is I talk to a different person.
Yeah,
It's a
talk
lot of
about that, the different interviews,
yeah,
that you did.
yeah.
How did you approach them with that? How did they feel about that? What
Well,
made
yeah,
you wanna do that?
that's a good question. Let me just
Mhm.
finish the other
Yeah, I'm
question
sorry.
before I say that. No, it's
Mhm,
okay. I just it's a lot of information in each chapter, and like I said earlier, movement is a way to help us move energy and process things. So I
mhm,
wanted to give people the practice that they could do to integrate all of the what they read, what it triggered in them, their own
mm,
thoughts, their own
mm,
feelings, because it can the book can bring up memories and feelings, and so I want to provide something to hold the reader. So like
mm.
literally, like I'm trying to hold space for them and help
Wow,
them hold space for themselves too,
wow,
by having this movement practice and deep breathing.
wow.
But
Yeah.
the interviews, I wanted, like I said before at the beginning of our talk today, I wanted to kind of create a kind of a meeting in a book, a
Mhm,
recovery, you know, a community. I wanted to create a community through the pages of the book. And
mm,
so there's my story, my voice, but I wanted to bring the voices of others. And so I have a bunch of people that I've met along my way in my recovery journey
mm.
to speak on various topics. And I think it was wonderful. I'm so grateful for each and every person who agreed to be a part of it, because I think they brought so much. And a lot of the feedback that I've gotten from people who've read the book is like, oh, so and so's story really impacted me. Or
Mm,
when they said this, it made me think, or I really identify with what they said.
mm,
So, and that's what happens in the meeting. Someone will say
yeah,
something. You might not hear anything else in the hour-long meeting, but that one sentence that someone said
mm,
might be the thing that you walk away with that just was exactly what you needed.
wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. Let's see what I want to ask you now. I think you've said what do you most hope readers will take away from your book?
I hope that they will understand on a visceral level that they're not
Mhm.
alone.
Right.
I think a lot of people who are dealing with addiction of any kind, there's a level of isolation and a sense of uniqueness that no one
Mhm.
could possibly understand what I'm going through. I want people to know that they're not alone, and that recovery is possible for them, and that they're worthy
Mm,
of it. And um, and to just give people hope. I really want to just give people hope.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, because if
Yeah.
you lose hope,
What do you
you know,
have?
yeah,
Yeah.
what do you have? What do you have?
Yeah.
So how can they get the book? Where are you? Where how can they get a hold of your book?
Yeah, you can go to my website, stephenwashingtonexperience.com, and you can order the book there, or you can go to Amazon or Barnes and Noble
Mhm.
online, and you might even be able to find it in some bookstores. I've walked into a Barnes and Noble every now and again and found my book on a shelf
Oh,
in the recovery section.
oh my gosh.
So yeah, but
That's
the
awesome.
easiest thing is just to
Mhm.
go online,
Oh, yeah.
and and you
Okay.
can get it in a day.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you need to do that. You need to get a copy of Recovering You. Can we see the cover again? I just like looking at it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Ooh.
He's so handsome.
Oh, thank you.
I
Wow.
Daddy would be so proud of you, Steve.
Mm,
He would be so proud. He really would. He would.
thank
And Diane, oh my God, she'd be over the moon.
She would
She
be.
would be. She would be over. I think you know how Daddy was. Daddy's, but Diane
Yeah.
would just, yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
think well, she was proud that I was sober
She was.
because I
Yeah,
would
she
talk to
was.
her about it. She was
Mhm.
receptive for me to talk to her about that, which was
Mhm.
really important, and it was really meaningful. Our father, it was harder because he was dealing with his own addiction, which I think
Right.
really skyrocketed
Yeah. At the
during
end.
those final years.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'll never forget going when Diane died, and what
Mm.
was in South Carolina that week of the funeral and before and after. I was thinking I was there maybe like a couple of weeks. And and I asked him to take me to a meeting, drive me to a meeting. And he said to me, "So you don't drink anything, not even beer?" And I was like, "No, daddy,
That's alcohol, Jimmy.
I
That is
don't drink beer
alcohol.
either."
Like beer has its own classification.
It
There's
does, but
alcohol and there's beer.
a lot of people think the same thing, and even wine, they think like wine is like alcohol light, so it's not really
No, it's
drinking, but it's not.
alcohol. It's
It's alcohol for
NyQuil
sure.
is, I mean, Listerine. I remember working in the mini mart. Remember the mini mart?
Yeah.
On Sundays, we had a guy who would come and buy bottles and bottles of Listerine. And me, I'm young. I don't flipping know. And I remember John Bello coming over and he's, he goes to the shelf and all the Listerine's gone. And he said, what's going on? And I told him, I said, well, this guy, he came and he bought like 7 bottles. He said, Terry bought 7 bottles. She said, don't sell them anymore. And I was like, wow, I just thought he had really bad breath. I had no idea he was drinking it. I mean, he was drinking it. And Steve, remember where the mini mart was? He was
Yeah.
going around the alleyway. When you leave the mini mart, you go make that
Parking
right,
lot.
like you're going down to the Y. He was
Yeah.
going in the alley and drinking it all. And Johnny went back there, and all the empty bottles of Listerine. He had the cleanest breath on
Yes.
Tresser Boulevard, on
I'm
Rocky
telling
Boulevard.
you, gingivitis didn't get him.
Gingivitis did not get him. It was just so funny. I had no idea. He said, "You didn't think it was strange? He was buying 7 bottles of Listerine." I'm like, "No, I had really good sales that day."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Too bad you weren't making a
So
commission off of
funny.
it.
I was like salesperson of the month. I thought, but
Oh,
it's
wow.
funny. I mean, the addiction is strong. It's a beast. They call it the monkey on your back, but
It is.
it is something,
It is.
and I like what you said about, recovery is possible. Your sobriety it's possible, you know.
Yeah, yeah. But
So
you have to reach out.
yeah,
You can't do it alone. I
no,
think,
yeah,
and because if we could do it alone, so many of us would have done it
yeah,
alone before we ever ended up in a rehab or
right,
in the rooms of 12-step recovery or
yeah,
other forms. Wow, I think that's all the time we have.
yeah.
Wow.
Wow. Oh my gosh, look at that.
I know.
Well, that was awesome. I love you so much. I'm so, so proud of you and
I love you too.
where you are in your life and all
Back
the
at you.
wonderful things that are still yet to come.
Yeah.
Wonderful things are coming.
Thank you.
I'm excited, and I'm excited to have a front row seat.
Yeah. Same here for you.
Thank you. I'm
All right.
excited for me too.
Thanks everybody for tuning
Yeah.
in. We'll see you all again next time.
Yes. Have a wonderful week.
Thank
Until next
you.
time.